The goal of Putin was to avoid Ukraine to be a country. I know because I spoke with him about this.
What did he say?
I mean, he said one day, he said to me...
More of this interview in a moment, so just hold on. It's important. It's a very important conversation and a more strategic discussion on where Europe stands with regards to relationship with the country of Russia and why we start hearing voices like this coming out with regards to how the geopolitical environment is tense. For those of you who don't know who José Manuel Barroso is, he was a Portuguese politician and a law professor. He previously served as the 115th Prime Minister of the country of Portugal, and that was from 2004 to 2014, and the 11th President of the European Union. It's important that he basically came out swinging that the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, told him that he never wanted Ukraine to be a country, to even exist. So let's dive into that conversation so you can begin to understand how things are unraveled with regards to these very discussions on what's going on. He dived into some issues regards to Ukraine's membership of the European Union, and more importantly, talk about the current events happening between the country of Russia and also Ukraine and the European Union. And he dived into some very other strategic areas about Global South. So let me roll this clip first, and then we will get into more specifics with regards to this particular episode.
The goal of Putin was to avoid Ukraine to be a country. I know because I spoke with him about this.
What did he say?
I mean, he said one day, he said to me, why are you defending Ukraine? You know very well that Ukraine is an artificial country created by the CIA and by the European Commission. I told him, look, if it was the European Commission who created Ukraine, I should be informed. So it's completely... So, in fact, he does not want Ukraine to exist, or if it exists, to be a kind of Belarusia, without any independence in foreign policy or in defense terms. It can be a vassal state. This is his goal. So that's why if we are able to make Ukraine member of the European Union, it shows that his goal was not fulfilled. And what is at stake is exactly that. Are we going to support Ukraine in a way that Ukraine can be a country? Or are we going to say, okay, Mr. Putin, you are stronger, we are weak, you can take Ukraine, it's not so important for us. That's the question.
Now, this is where things become a little bit murky. The journalist asked Mr. Barroso if Ukraine should join the European Union. From Mr. Barroso's answer, you clearly understand that the European Union has not come up with a clear plan on where does Ukraine stands. It's important that the European Union president say one thing and other officials say other things, because it's difficult to set a date. It's not clear. I think Europe to an extent it's playing Ukraine in a way, because if Ukraine was to join European Union, this would have gone ahead long time ago. And this institutional conversation, the process is dragging, and these officials talking on both sides of their mouth, they're struggling to figure out what works and what doesn't work. It's taking time, and I think that we've seen the European Union Commission president travel to Ukraine to showcase symbolically with the European flag and a Ukrainian flag. It's a complex integration. I think Europe is moving really carefully in this. They are charting a path that other experts see, or other countries are observing very closely. So the question came back, will there be a date, or can you tell us a date that Ukraine will join the European Union? Let's listen to what Mr. Barroso said, and then you can make a judgment for yourself.
Just before I let you go, enlargement. Do you think Ukraine will be a member of the European Union by 2030, as Charles Michel has said?
I never commit to dates. In fact, why? Because they can be frustrating if you don't achieve them. But I hope and I expect Ukraine one day to be a member of the European Union.
But it's important for Ukraine's future security, so it would have to happen sooner rather than later,
yeah,
right?
Yes, ideally, yes. But
I think the EU is prepared.
But there is a variable here we do not control. When the war is over, we don't know. And secondly, afterwards, both the European Union and Ukraine itself should be ready for becoming a member, which has some criteria that should be respected. That's why I think it's not prudent. I understand that the idea of setting a date is an aspirational date, let's put it like that. But we cannot commit to a date. But yes, but we should, meanwhile, do everything to help Ukraine to become a member. I don't believe that Putin will, I know Putin. Putin is the leader outside the European Union that I met the most during my 10 years in office. I met him 25 times. I know what he feels. And now,
this is where things got really spicy or dicier, because instead of Mr. Barroso to answer the question, he dodges the conversation on if Ukraine will become a member of the European Union, and instead jump to talk about the current death tolls and things happening in the country of Russia, and intentionally ignoring what the debt that's going on both sides. War is brutal. It's not good what's going on in Ukraine, and how the Ukrainian troops died, that of Russia died. So this war should come to an end to an extent, because the continent of Africa is feeling the pinch as well. But it's interesting how Mr. Barroso dodged the question of Ukraine to become a member of the European Union, and instead jump on to criticize Russia's war debt on the battlefield. So this is where the hypocritical conversation comes in, and these politicians sometimes send the wrong signal. Let's listen to what he has to say with regards to this.
when we have hundreds of thousands of young Russians being killed already now, there are 1,200 casualties per day, Russian casualties. Putin does not want to come to the Russian people and say, okay, we have gained some more territory, a little bit of Donbass, a little bit of Crimea. No. The goal of Putin was to avoid Ukraine to be a country. I know because I spoke with him about this.
What did he say?
I mean, he said one day, he said to me, why are you defending Ukraine? You know very well that Ukraine is an artificial country created by the CIA and by the European Commission. I told him, look, if it was the European Commission who created Ukraine, I should be informed.
Mr. Barroso went ahead to slam the United States of America. Basically, he pointed out that he doesn't care, doesn't give it down on what's going to happen in the US. As we all know, that Donald Trump will soon take power in January, and Europe is paying attention, that they are concerned that Trump's relationship with Russia and that Russia will not receive the pressure is currently receiving now from the president of the United States, Joe Biden, and Trump may be more relaxed. And Trump has openly said that he is going to end the war in 24 hours. So I wondered how that's going to work. So we're all going to see. So Mr. Barroso also pointed out that democracy is alive, that countries even in Africa, according to him, saying that global South countries also face some challenges and that they will continue to support Ukraine. Listen to what he have to say.
And what should we do now?
I mean,
Where
to support
are we now?
Ukraine.
Yeah.
I have no doubts about it. We should support Ukraine. And whatever happens with our American friends, we should support Ukraine. Because if not, it's not only going to be a tragedy for Ukraine, it's a very important country, but it's a tragedy for Europe. And it's going to be the best possible offer we give to the movements against democracy, against international law, against also our own values. If Russia and others that are now supporting Russia continue to say all over the world, including in the so-called global South, that Europe and the West, they are gone, they are decadent, they no longer count, democracy is completely corrupt ideology, we have to do it another way. I mean, what is at stake in Ukraine is a fundamental issue for all the world. The so-called global South is looking.
From every indication, you can hear from Mr. Barroso's analysis. He keeps using the word the so-called global South. It is interesting how these politicians basically see other regions and competitiveness. However, he went ahead to point out very clear that there was huge confusion and a diverse support, non-agreement on how to sanction the country of Russia among European countries and European leaders. He went ahead to explain how other countries were still on the fence and went detailing on the reason why what sectors should be sanctioned. So it's important to note that the way it looks strong from the outside is not the way it looks strong in the inside. Let's listen to what Mr. Barroso said, and we close this episode.
But what do you think of the period, I suppose? I mean, do you think that the warnings weren't taken seriously? Was there a belief that in 2014 maybe we shouldn't escalate by applying such extreme sanctions against Russia for Crimea? You know, like, what was the thinking?
I can't tell you what was the thinking because I was in that meeting. What happened was that facing the invasion of Crimea, there were three possibilities. One is to go direct war against Russia. Nobody wants a war against Russia, still today. Another thing was to make a kind of a diplomatic communique, regretting, almost zero. And there was a middle way. A middle way was sanctions. And that's what we approved. And with a strong support from Germany, France, UK, Merkel, Hollande, Cameron. But already then, with some voices against sanctions, the first one was in fact Viktor Orban. Orban said, if I don't agree with sanctions, because there will be counter-sanctions, it will be negative for us, but if there is a consensus, I will not oppose it. But others, including the Netherlands, which quite insular, and also Malta, Cyprus, Greece and Slovakia, were, let's say, with some level of ambiguity.
And the Baltics were for them, I see.
The Baltics were for them. But France and Germany were very strongly for them, and UK. The problem was which kind of sanctions, because then they could not agree, and they asked the Commission to design the sanctions. And then, of course, each country said sanctions, but one country, you can imagine which country said, not financial sanctions, not financial services. Others said, not diamonds, not ships, not agriculture, not farming. Because
we had the discussion in
that's why at the end of the day, the sanction package was relatively minimalist compared to what happened afterwards.
Well, look, let's go back to 2014, or even further. You know, I think we'd all like to go back to those days and look at what could have been done differently, or maybe not done at all. But like, let's say where we are with Ukraine and Putin, and in 2008 we had the invasion of Georgia. 2014 was obviously Crimea. We also had the assassination of Litvinenko in the UK, and so on. And the Baltics were constantly saying to the EU, we need to be much stronger when it comes to Putin and stop being so naive when it comes to Russia, having interdependence when it comes to oil and gas. I mean, what's your assessment of that time now when you look back at the warnings you were given? What was going on?
I think I always like to quote Ecclesiastes, the Old Testament of the Bible. There is a time for everything. I think there was some time where we tried, with the best of our efforts, to have a constructive relationship with Russia. And we've tried. But Russia has been changing progressively. Now, okay, some were more keen to understand Russia. Congratulations. By the way, also, to be honest, some of them, they did not prepare for what happened afterwards. So, and they were not always right on some of their positions. Having said that, I think now it's obvious. We had the invasion, a full invasion of Ukraine. What I hope that is now that countries from the north, from the south, from the center, from the periphery, from the east, or from the west understand that what is at stake is in fact for all Europe, and in fact not only for all Europe, for the world. What we have now is a global conflict. It's not a European conflict. I mean, North Korean military are in Europe now, in one country, invading or fighting against a European country as well. This is very serious. So we need to act together.
We want to thank you for watching. Hopefully we've informed you regards to the global strategic issues and reason why the conflict in Ukraine and Russia will continue to shape global politics and where does Africa stand, and with the current United States of America going through a huge transition, and we all are going to see what will happen in regards to the Russian conflict with Ukraine. We want to thank you for watching. We encourage you to check some other informative video on our YouTube channel. We are looking forward to meeting you again. Have a good day. Bye-bye.